Hi and welcome. In this video we're going to implement deletion of a part, and you can see that I've added a new view controller, a deleting view controller, to our storyboard. I've got two segues, so we want to make sure that both of these segues have an identifier. The first segue is coming from the new part button. The second segue is coming from a new button on our main view controller called delete part. Now remember, as we're looking at these views and view controllers, that this is a testing setup for our model. Our application probably won't look anything like this, but it does prove the concept of the model or not. So let's look at these two segues. I want to zoom in first on our main view controller, and I can look at the two segues and see that the first segue, as we remember, had an identifier of adding. The second segue, I put an identifier of deleting, and we can see the button that triggers the segue in each case, a new part and delete part. Now if I look at my deleting view controller, I've remembered first of all that when I look at the view controller or files owner, the deleting view controller, I've set that up to have a class of deleting view controller, and I've added that class H and M right here. In our storyboard, all I have is a part number label and then a UI text field for part number and then a button, delete part. So pretty simple. We're going to specify the part number to be deleted, and then we're going to click on delete part, and it's going to delete the part. Now the business rule that I've decided to implement here is I'll delete the part from the catalog as long as there are no parts of that name, of that part number type, in inventory. The reason I've done this is this prevents let's say, a unscrupulous parts room clerk from pocketing a bunch of parts and then just deleting that part. So we want to think of things like that as we're developing applications for business, and this is certainly a business application. We assume that everybody is completely honest, but oftentimes business rules will require that we put these kinds of things in place. Now there would be some other rules wrapped around this, probably because that parts room clerk that wanted to pocket those parts and leave, let's say on their last day of work, could just go in and delete the parts from inventory, let's say. But right now, our application has no way to delete parts from inventory. The only thing we have right at this present time that we're applying this business rule to is the ability to delete parts from the catalog. So if the part is in inventory and has a quantity, we'll be able not to delete those parts. So let's look at that logic. First of all, in the deleting view controller, I've defined a protocol as a callback to my view controller. And the one method, a required method, is a void return user did request deletion of part number, with a part number being passed. Delegate methods tend to get kind of long, but we want to make sure that we use nice descriptive method names for this. The property, I've got a delegate property set up as weak property. It's an ID property, so it is a pointer to any object, but it doesn't require that star because ID is already a pointer. And then I've got a property for my text field. Again, I'm prepending TF because I want to know that this is a text field in my code, so TF part num. And then I have two methods. I have the button delete touched, which is just going to call that delegate method up to my view controller. And then I have TF done editing, text field done editing, so that I can dismiss the keyboard, just as we did in the adding view controller for those text fields. So let's look at these methods. I've synthesized my delegate and my TF part num. In TF done editing, I'm just resigning first responder on the sender, and that makes the keyboard go away, so that's the easy one. Then my delete button, I've got the text from the text field, and that's the part number. So I just call user did request deletion of part number with self.tfpartnum.text. And then in the init and the rest, this is just the standard code that's provided in a view controller. I can actually get rid of these delegate methods in my code if I want to, because I'm not using them at all. All right, so that's the deleting view controller. Now what happens in the view controller to respond to this delegate method? Well, first of all, I adopt the deleting delegate protocol. And we can see that I can adopt multiple protocols just by comma separating them inside the angle brackets. Now, I've also imported the deleting view controller because I need to get to that type within the segue. Okay, and everything else is the same. In my prepare for segue sender method, I had already the adding view controller by looking at the segues identifier. So I've added this code. If the segues identifier is deleting, then I cast the segues destination view controller as a deleting view controller called deleting VC, and then set deleting VC's delegate to self. So this is the only place that we can actually set that delegate, is in the prepare for segue sender method. As long as we're using storyboards, we're using nib files, we can set this up when we instantiate the view controller. Okay, yeah, usually in view.did_load is where we do that in nib files. But since we're using storyboards, we need to do this delegation setting where we set the delegate to this class within prepare for segue sender. All right, so let's look at user did request deletion of part number. Remember, in the catalog class, in parts catalog, we already have a delete method. So that should work just fine. All we got to do is apply that business logic of seeing if the inventory already contains one. So the first thing we do is dismiss the deleting view controller. Now, we set up an integer here, inventory quantity, and we set it to 0 because we're going to assume that if the user is trying to delete a part, they're trying to delete it from the catalog, and inventory is already either 0 or that part number doesn't exist. And really, in inventory, if the inventory for a particular part goes to 0, it should be deleted from inventory anyway, because it's not in inventory. Follow me? It's only in the catalog. The catalog is the sort of parts that just can exist. Inventory is specific parts that exist in a specific place. So there we go. So we go through the inventory. First of all, we get the bin out of all keys of self-inventory bins. Self.inventory.bins is an NS dictionary. We get all the keys of that. And then we get the set that corresponds to that bin. And then we get an array that corresponds to each element in that set. We check to see if the part number, this parts object at index 0, is equal to the part number that we passed in. If it is, then we set the inventory quantity equal to the object at index 1, which is that quantity field in that array. Okay, and now we have a flag to work with, because we won't be deleting this part unless its quantity is greater than 0. If that part exists, we want to raise an alert, and we have a method to do that. The alert text method is already defined, and we're just passing in a string. And the string that we pass in is a string with the format cannot delete part, and then this is the part number, and then a quantity remain in inventory, and that's the inventory quantity. And then we raise that alert with the alert text. So self.raiseAlert is really simple. It sets up a UI alert view called alert view with passing in that alert string with just an OK button, and then shows the alert view. So now we come out of all those for loops, which is the fast enumeration of that dictionary. And then we say, if inventory quantity is equal to 0, which means it wasn't found in inventory, remember our little inventory quantity flag, if that's equal to 0, then we can delete the part, and we do so. We do that by calling delete part on our catalog. And then all we're doing here is using those couple of reporting convenience methods on the catalog and the inventory to go ahead and redisplay our catalog and our inventory to make sure that that deletion occurred if it could. Okay, so now let's run this, and remember that in our parts catalog we have the delete part method right here. So all we're doing is fast enumeration. We find the part, and if it's in there, we remove it. We talked about that when we talked about delete part in the last video. So let's run this. So let's add a part, because we can't delete one unless we have one in inventory or in the catalog. So let's say that we have part number 001. It's called first part. And then the description is part 1. The quantity, let's not put this in inventory. So nothing. The reorder quantity, let's say that we get down to 10, we'll reorder it, and it's in bin PR0024. Okay. So now we have a bin that part would initially go into, but we have no quantity, so it shouldn't go into inventory at all. So let's see that. Well, it looks pretty good so far. Our inventory report is blank, but it is in the catalog. So we're looking pretty good so far. Now let's try to delete it. We should be able to delete this one because the inventory report doesn't contain it. In other words, it's not in inventory. So let's delete that. We're going to delete PN001. And now when we click delete part, it should delete that from the catalog, right? Okay, so we get parts list and inventory report, and that was deleted from the catalog. All right, so now let's really now look at the inventory catalog again. When we look at this delete part method, we're in the enumeration, right? And we check to see if the target part is equal to the part number. And then we just remove that object, but we're still within the enumeration. And this is bad because this could throw an error. We shouldn't remove things while we're enumerating. So let's put a comment in here. And this is a special form of comment called a fix me comment with a colon. And this is an unsafe technique. Never delete during enumeration, let's say. So we can come back to this later. And how are we going to find this comment? Well, we could just go to edit and search find within files or something like that. But watch this. If we save this, just like our pragmas show up, we also have the fix me comments showing up when we drag down. So now let's just go ahead and fix this. I mean, we could say, okay, we're going to fix this later, but let's go and fix it now. I have a method here that works just fine. If I expand this code, let's just go ahead and delete this method. We don't want to delete that element unless it exists. And the comment here is cannot remove object from a container while the container is being enumerated. In other words, we want to flag the object to be removed and then remove it after the enumeration is done. So we set up a flag here called part to remove. And then we just go through, like we did before, the target part in self-listing. If the target part number is equal to the string p number, that sometimes causes a crash if we try to do self.listing remove object target part. Instead, we want to set the part to remove to the target part. And then, after we're done with the enumeration, now remove the part. Self.listing remove object part to remove. Okay, so we've got that. And this doesn't always cause an error, but if it does, and when it does, because it will at some point, when it does cause an error, it's usually very difficult to track. So, now if we rerun, let's do a nice full test. We'll just drag this up all the way, and here we go. We'll add a couple of parts. The first part we're going to put in inventory. So PN001, the name is part 1. It is the first part. We'll put 100 of them in inventory with 10%, and we'll put that in bin parts room 001. And now if we click OK, we've got it in the bins, we've got it in our catalog, and we've got it in inventory. So let's add a new part that doesn't go in inventory. So this is PN002. Part 2 is our second part. The description is second part. And now this one's not in inventory, so let's just put a reorder quantity of 15 on that. And we'll put that in bin parts room 002. And then done. Okay. All right, now, in our second listing, we have two parts, PN001 and PN002, but only PN001 is in inventory. Now, if we try to delete PN001, we shouldn't be able to. We should get that alert. So let's try that. Hit enter and delete the part. It goes back to the first screen and it raises that alert. Cannot delete part PN001. 100 remain in inventory. Okay, so that did exactly what we wanted it to do. Let's delete the other part, PN002. Now if we go and delete the part, we get our report back. The parts list only has PN001 in it, and PN001 is still in inventory, which it should have been, but PN002 is gone from the parts list. So we have successfully tested this model. Thank you very much.